This channel is made possible by viewers like you. My viewers, subscribers, and patrons greatly help to keep this channel going. I wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for all of you. Please make sure to subscribe so you don't miss any uploads. And if you'd like to go the extra mile, please check out my Patreon page. For just $1 a month, you'll get access to what I'm working on, previews of upcoming content, and even early videos, along with other tier options for those that are interested. Thank you, and now on to the video. A few years ago, Sony seemed to try to take a good step forward with efforts for gaming preservation. When you look back at their catalog, just from the exclusives, there are so many wonderful gems and games there that honestly have no easy way to play them today. Honestly, it should be as simple as going on the PSN store, finding the older title you want, download it, and then you're playing it like you did on its respective system. But that isn't how it worked for a lot of titles. Thankfully, some efforts have been made, and I really appreciated this. It has been awesome to see titles like Siphon Filter come back, and are now very accessible to anyone with a PS4 and 5. Many of these games still play great today, and now you can jump right into them very easily on your PlayStation console. That being said, while Sony has made efforts, the amount of titles is rather small, and the frequency for release of them are kinda slow. This catalog should be much more substantial than it currently is. That all being said, Sony now seems to be making another step toward making more PS2 games available too. On June 11th, we're getting 3 games for the PS2, and honestly all 3 are really good, but one in particular really surprised me because it has now sort of turned into one of Sony's underdog mascots. It appears Sly is finally coming back.
Well, on the night I was supposed to inherit the book, 5 visitors came unannounced to our door. My father fought to protect us, but the gang of villains known as the Fiendish Five overpowered him and ransacked our house until they found the Thievius Raccoonus. Our family's manual of thieving greatness fell into their filthy hands. They tore the book into 5 pieces and split it up, each villain disappearing to the farthest corners of the world to commit dastardly crimes.
So with Sly coming back, I thought it would be a good excuse to talk about it. When I first saw this news, it was exclusive to Star Wars: The Clone Wars. I just thought we were getting that Star Wars title back, which was awesome news by itself. I love that game, and it's an underrated prequel game, but then I was able to finally see the full blog post from PlayStation, and this announcement was just getting better. Sly has been absent from Sony consoles for far too long. Even before Sony did this big revamp of the PS Plus program, there were a handful of PS2 games released on the PSN. It was nice, but it was just this odd grouping of titles. You had the Jack series, but nothing from Sly. There was Red Faction, but no access to Black or other FPS games. At the time, it felt like Sony was just like, here are a few older titles, now leave us alone. But now with this new group, it appears they are trying to show that they care about this. I think partly why we're getting the PS2 games now is that a new porting company is actually working with Sony exclusively for the PS2 games. So hopefully we'll see more titles in the future. But with all that being said, Sly is back and it's just awesome. This is honestly a series that should not be as underrated or overlooked than it is. While the fans are a passionate bunch, it seems like Sony, until now, hasn't really kept lifting this title back up past the PS3 era. And honestly, with me growing less and less interested with new Sony exclusives or sequels, getting back to some games that they did really well is something that will keep me interested in their consoles. So what makes Sly Cooper so special, especially the first title? First, you had a game studio that was now in their second game at the time. They made an overlooked platformer on the Nintendo 64 that even Sony rejected to publish, so Sly would be Sucker Punch's first Sony game. And for a second title, talk about blowing you away. What makes Sly special? Well, pretty much the entire package. The game manages to nail everything that it sets out to do. Even going back to it now, we see a title that is aged like fine wine, especially considering that no one really seems to make games like this anymore. The days of big studios making engaging action platformers seems to be a thing of the past. Ironically, we need more titles like this, especially from the big studios. Sly is very fun to play, has a great story, wonderful art style, and has a really good soundtrack. Yes, it really does get it all right. Plus, when going back to this game, I love how the game starts. where many modern titles like to slowly, and sometimes to their detriment, get you to where you can actually play their game. Here, right from hitting start, you are playing the game. The opening credits are done as you are playing the first level. It's a cool way to immediately give control to the player, along with pushing the narrative forward. It all works to completely absorb you in the experience. Plus, that first level, while only about 10 minutes long, is such a great way to start the game. There are no tutorials. Everything is done in a way to have the player play around with the buttons and see what each one does. It's all intuitive and slickly presented. Then you have the explosive finish and are treated to some of the best cutscenes in the business. This is how you start a game. It is the kind of introduction that makes you realize, okay, I think the rest of this game is going to be awesome, because if the first thing that the developers wanted to show me was this good, I can't wait to see what the rest has in store for me. First impressions are key, and I think a lot of newcomers are really going to like this once they sit down with it. Sly is an action platformer with stealth elements sprinkled throughout. There are situations where you need to dodge traps, alarms, and guards. The game isn't really a full-on stealth game, but rather an action platformer first, with stealth parts and elements. But the way the entire game is constructed and conveyed, every action, even movement, has this sneakiness to this. A lot of work went into how Sly looks and moves, along with the entire game being set at night, that creates this shadowy atmosphere. So yes, you'll be spending most of your time jumping, fighting some enemies, and navigating the environments to steal back your family's book. Peppered throughout the entire game are a series of minigames as well. The variety here is really appreciated, as it can range from sniper levels, driving, twin-stick shooting, and many others. Generally, I do find them fun, but this area of the game is one that needed more refinement, with a few other minigames. I can't wait for people to play the chicken one, because that is easily the worst part of the game. Now, something that I think that is going to be interesting with these PS2 releases is, will they have some of the same features like other retro titles Sony released? So two things I love that Sony added was being able to save at any time, which is a nice convenience feature. The other is how you can rewind your gameplay at any moment. This means that you do not need to sit through a load screen if you die, or work your way back up to the point that you want to try again. You can just simply rewind it to where you were and then get back into it. I love these features since they are a great way to provide some nice options that a newcomer might really appreciate, and will probably find some of the older titles even more accessible if need be. At the same time, you can opt to just not use them and keep to a traditional experience, so I hope these options are included. I am really happy to see Sly coming back in some form today. Maybe with enough interest, it could mean another new game or something Sly related coming out in the future. I do hope we get to see all of the Sly entries from the PS2 added to this, along with other PS2 games coming back to get a chance to shine again. This group of 3 coming back is a nice bunch, and it seems like an underrated trio of titles. The Clone Wars was made by Pandemic. It was great, and it's one that just doesn't get talked about enough. Then you have Tomb Raider Legends, and honestly that entire trilogy gets overlooked, and it's pretty great. Then you have Sly, and that is such an awesome thing to see come back, especially from Sony. Are you excited to play any of these titles again? What PS2 games should they bring back next? Let me know all of this in the comments down below. If you're interested in being notified of new videos, please hit the subscribe button and bell. And if you would like to support the channel and get early access to content, please check out my Patreon. All of the links will be at the end of this video and within the description. And thank you very much for watching.